This is episode number 28 of the Emotional Freedom Podcast. Now, quick question. Do you have anyone in your life whom you actually have a grudge against? Meaning to say, you are just, every time you think of them or that person, you feel very angry or you felt as if the emotion is just pent up in you. Well, then this episode is for you because in today's episode, we are going to talk about forgiveness. Now, we will look at why forgiveness is so difficult to do for a lot of people, and also why it is important that you actually practice forgiveness. And even more important is, how do you do it? So stay tuned. You know, in this world that we live in today, it is virtually impossible for anyone to go through life without being offended, without being hurt, or without being wronged by another person. And as a result of that, there's just too many opportunities for us to have a grudge, to be angry, or to just feel as if we have been wronged. And there's injustice and all that. So if you are struggling with, anger towards someone, you hold up the grudge against the person, you are not forgiving them, you know what? I'm not going to blame you on that because you have a very good reason why you are angry at the person in the first place. But the key here is this. When we hold anger or as well as unforgiveness towards someone, what we are actually doing is we are hurting ourselves in the process. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, if you are very angry at someone, you keep on replaying that memory of the past wrong that has been done on you over and over and over in your mind. What happens there is you are confining yourself to a prison that has no walls. Because everywhere you go, it could be purposely thinking about it, or it could be certain things that accidentally trigger it for you. All of a sudden, you will be replaying that memory over and over again. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Every time when you think of that memory, isn't it true that it makes you feel bad? It makes you feel angry. It makes you feel down. It makes you feel miserable sometimes. And you would rather not think about it, right? But when we actually hold a grudge against someone, what happens here is we are doing that thing which we actually don't want to. So there are a few reasons why people actually find it so difficult to forgive people. Now let's look at them one by one. Now the first thing why people actually find it so hard to forgive someone is because the idea that if they forgive the person, it means that they condone the person's wrongdoing. And by not forgiving them, it means that they are sending a message to the other person that what they have done is not right. So let's analyze this thought a little bit, yeah? Now, when we actually forgive someone, is it true that we are telling them that, look, what you did is right and what I'm doing is wrong, so that means that if I forgive you, that means that I admit I'm wrong? Well, I think that is a wrong way of thinking. Now, why do I say that? You see, if a person has robbed you, just for example, and we know that that action is wrong. So by forgiving, does it mean that you are wrong and the person is right? Okay, before you answer that, let's look at it the other way around. Or can I say that by not forgiving, that means that you are right and the other person is wrong? Doesn't really make sense because that action that the person does, whether or not you forgive or you don't forgive it, that action is actually wrong. But when you don't forgive a person, what happens here is you will continuously be quote-unquote robbed in your mind over and over again because you are continuously holding on to that. So that is one of the first reasons why a lot of people felt as if it is so difficult for them to forgive other people. Now, reason number two why people find it so difficult or challenging to forgive others has got to do with the idea that if I forgive that person, then I may repeat it again, and I don't want to repeat that. So because of that, People find it so difficult to forgive it because they are worried that if they forgive the person, then they will open themselves up to be hurt by that person again, or maybe to be hurt by other people the same way again. And I can understand that because that is what I call as a defense mechanism. It's the way for us to protect ourselves because we want to be safe. We want to be secure. We want to be free from the hurt and the pain that has been caused by it. And because of that, people also find it very difficult for them to forgive. Now, the third reason why people actually find it very hard to forgive is because unknowingly, what they wanted to do is they wanted to punish the other person. They wanted to punish the person who has done them wrong. And, that's when the mind begins to reason that if they forgive the person, that means that they are no longer punishing the other person. And when that happens, they felt as if there is this injustice that is done because after all, the wrongdoer wasn't punished by, say, law, or the wrongdoer never apologized, things still go on, and yet you begin to feel as if you are the one bearing all the pain and all the heartache, etc. Now, these are the three main reasons why people may find it so difficult to forgive another person. Now, I want to talk about why it is to your advantage to forgive others. You see, I remember a story that I read, and I believe it was a story told by the Buddha himself. And he said this: when a person is having a grudge or anger, what is actually happening is the person is holding onto the charcoal, burning charcoal on his hand. But in his heart, he is wishing for the other person to be burned by it. Or another version I've heard is, a person who holds the anger as well as the grudge, unforgiveness, this person is swallowing poison, but hoping that the other person or the perpetrator dies instead. But we know if you are holding the burning charcoal in your hand, you get burned, not the other person. And if you are the one who swallowed the poison, you get poisoned, you die, not the other person. So why is it important for us to actually forgive another person? Because you see, forgiveness is not something that you do for the other person. Forgiveness is actually something that you do for yourself. For yourself means that you are now setting yourself free from the prison of unforgiveness that has no walls, that has no border, because if you continue to have unforgiveness in you, the prison will continue to be there. So one of the biggest things that I personally have experienced when it comes to forgiving others is that I find that when I choose to forgive another person, the other person who has done me wrong, that person is not affected by it. Reason is because the person will continue to be that person. That is just whom this person is. But I find that when I really forgave the person, I allowed myself room to breathe, room to grow, and room to live the life that I want to live. Now, I know that it's going to be quite challenging for you to decide to forgive a person just like that. So here I would like to suggest a few things that you can actually consider or look at in your decision, to make your decision to forgive someone. Number one, a lot of people wrongly say that you should forgive and forget. I disagree with that wholeheartedly because forgiving and forgetting are two different things. You should forgive a person, but you should remember the lesson. You should remember the lesson of what happened when you were not careful or when you were reckless and how that gave chance to another person to hurt you. So remember the lesson that you have learned so that you will never repeat that. And when you have learned the lesson, then by forgiving the other person, you ensure that you will never be victim again. So that is point number one. You want to forgive the person, let go of the wrong, but remember the lesson that you have learned so that you don't repeat that. Now, point number two. When it comes to forgiving people, The second point is you are doing it for yourself. In other words, you are choosing to set yourself free from the bond. You see, anytime when someone, they have wronged you, or they have hurt you, or they have harmed you in whatever way, it created a bond between you and the other person. Now, the bond here is not positive because the bond created a lot of anger, dissatisfaction, toxic thinking, etc. So the bond is there. Sometimes it's also very strong. But when you continue to hold on to the grudge, you are also continue to hold on to the bond. And as long as you hold on to that bondage, it will continue to affect you in every area of your life. So decide for yourself that you are going to forgive the person. You are going to let go of that person by breaking that bond. And the best way to break that bond is to let it go. And continue with my earlier point, remember the lesson. Remember what that taught you. Remember so that you can become wiser. And let that go. Now, and the third and final point when it comes to forgiving another person is this. Now, when it comes to forgiving people, what you are doing is you are allowing yourself to be set free, as I mentioned earlier. And another thing that you are doing is also this. You are giving yourself an opportunity to have better health. You see, when you have anger or grudge towards someone, you are suppressing a lot of negativity. You are suppressing a lot of toxic chemicals in your body. You are suppressing a lot of pent-up emotion that would have been better if it has been released or it has been transformed. So what you can do, the best thing that you can do to get good health is when you forgive another person and you choose to release it and to let it go. And when you do that, you are giving yourself the space as well as the room to get better health. So forgiveness is something that is important. It is something that is very powerful. And it is also something that will set you free from bondages that have been created there or put there without you even trying. It's probably somebody else's fault. But don't punish yourself for that. Because when you do not forgive someone, that's what you are probably doing. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode, and I see you tomorrow.